We all know those moments when we put off things we should do. We are about to start, but we can't get started. We get into a vicious circle and end up blaming ourselves. But why do we procrastinate? Is it because we're lazy, or are there deeper psychological reasons behind it? In this video, we will talk about the real reasons behind procrastination. We'll explore how it's not just habit, but how emotions that we often don't even realize sabotage us. Procrastination is often seen as just a habit or laziness, but there is actually a much more complex process going on deep inside the mind. When faced with an unpleasant or challenging task, the brain can perceive it as a threat. This threat is fed by emotions such as fear of failure, worry about being criticized or feeling inadequate, and these emotions create stress in the mind. And the easiest way to deal with this stress is to run away. That is, postponing the task. Sometimes, even if we have the time or the ability to do the task, it is difficult to take action because of this subconscious defense mechanism. This is why procrastination often seems meaningless on the outside, but it is actually based on many repressed emotions in the inner world of the person. So procrastination is not just a time management problem, it is an emotional coping strategy. And without understanding this strategy, it is almost impossible to actually change it. Our brains are evolutionarily programmed to protect us from danger. In the past, these dangers were physical threats, wild animals, starvation, wars. But today, the perception of danger has changed. Now, even starting a project, studying for a difficult exam, or giving a speech can be perceived as a threat by our brains. Because these tasks trigger the risk of making mistakes, the possibility of being criticized, or the fear of failure. The brain's fight or flight mechanism kicks in, and we often prefer to run away. So instead of focusing, our minds turn to things that give us momentary pleasure: social media, watching TV shows, or engaging in unnecessary pursuits. This is actually the brain's way of protecting you. But this protection makes things more difficult in the long run. Because the more you run away, the bigger the task becomes, the more stress increases and the cycle continues. The brain wants to relax, but this relaxation is temporary. In the end, we are left with even more pressure. Many people label themselves as lazy when they procrastinate, but the truth may be much deeper than that. Because behind procrastination lies an anxiety that often goes unnoticed. There are constant questions in your mind about the work you're about to start. What if I don't do it well enough? Logically, what if I make a mistake? Logically, what if people don't like it? These thoughts may seem small on the surface, but your brain perceives them as a real threat and stops you in your tracks. This is where latent anxiety comes in. Without you even realizing it, the brain tries to protect you. Don't start now, you're already too tired. Tomorrow would be a better time. But this is an internal defense that triggers procrastination. So it may not be laziness, but unconscious fear of rejection, feelings of inadequacy, or perfectionism. So instead of asking yourself, why can't I do it? It may be more useful to ask yourself, what am I afraid of? When you recognize the emotion behind procrastination, you have a better chance of controlling it. Many people procrastinate in their daily lives. But while this habit is often thought to be only related to laziness or lack of discipline, its roots are much deeper, hidden in childhood. Our experiences as children, the messages we receive from our parents, and how we are treated can shape our procrastination habits today. Children, especially those with perfectionist, overbearing, or overly critical parents, grow up afraid of making mistakes. Over time, these children come to believe that everything has to be perfect before they start anything. The result? Constant procrastination. In addition, individuals whose emotional needs were not met as children may lose their intrinsic motivation over time. They always wait for external approval or pressure to do something because they have not learned to listen to their own desires. This leads to procrastination. Procrastination is sometimes an invisible rebellion. Individuals who have always lived according to the expectations of others as children try to take control in adulthood by unconsciously delaying things. In other words, procrastination is not just a present-day time management problem. This behavior is a reflection of repressed emotions, fears, and learned responses from the past. Therefore, to overcome procrastination, it is not enough to make plans. Sometimes it is necessary to go back to childhood and untie the knots there. Many people think that procrastination is just a bad habit or laziness. But in fact, this behavior is often rooted in anxiety disorders. Anxiety causes a person to imagine negative scenarios about a task before doing it, to fear failure, or to believe that the consequences will be overwhelming. This mental pressure prevents the person from taking action. The brain chooses the easiest way to escape these uncomfortable feelings: procrastination. In other words, the person distances himself from the task, not consciously, but unconsciously. For example, if a student sits down to prepare for an exam and thinks, "What if I fail? What if I mess up?" Зрение — эта тревога нарушает его концентрацию. As a result, they turn to their phone, do other things, or choose to do nothing at that moment. This cycle becomes chronic after a while. In other words, as anxiety increases, procrastination becomes stronger, and the person feels unsuccessful, guilty, and inadequate. This hidden link is actually a vicious circle. Anxiety breeds procrastination, and procrastination feeds anxiety. Unless this cycle is broken, the person will make a habit of avoiding a task, not taking charge of it. Many people comfort themselves after postponing a task by saying, "I focus better at the last minute anyway." While this does indeed seem to happen, in fact, what we call last-minute energy is often a temporary state of focus triggered by mental pressure. When the clock is ticking, the brain realizes that there is no longer any chance of avoidance and goes into survival mode. This causes adrenaline and stress hormones to kick in. These hormones make short-term high focus possible. However, this is not a sustainable energy. In fact, this process leads to an inability to use one's full potential, because work done in a hurry is often more superficial and more likely to make mistakes. Moreover, in the long run, this habit increases one's stress levels and reinforces procrastination behavior. Work done with last-minute energy may get done, but it usually ends up incomplete, tired, and dissatisfied. So yes, last-minute energy is felt, but it's not real productivity. It's just the mind working under pressure, and often getting into this mode can be detrimental to both performance and psychological health. Procrastination is actually a complex cycle. This cycle consists of a task that needs to be done, negative thoughts about that task, anxiety caused by these thoughts, other tasks to escape from the anxiety, followed by guilt and procrastination again. To break this vicious cycle, a few basic steps are very effective. The first step is awareness. It is very important to acknowledge that you procrastinate and to observe in which situations you do so. Ask yourself questions like, "What am I feeling right now? Why am I not starting?" Helps to recognize mental blocks. Secondly, it is necessary to break large and daunting tasks into small, manageable chunks. In this way, the brain shifts from perceiving a task too big to start to a doable step. Another important step is to let go of perfectionism. "What if I don't do it well?" is often the main reason for procrastination. However, even a poorly done job is better than no job at all. Taking a step, however small, is a powerful start to breaking the cycle. Also, short work and break methods, such as the Pomodoro technique to manage time well, can increase motivation. Finally, you need to be more compassionate towards yourself. Constantly blaming or humiliating oneself leads to more procrastination. Instead, positive reinforcement and recognizing small successes are much more effective. Because the most powerful key to breaking out of the procrastination cycle is inner understanding and systematic action. Beating procrastination requires not only motivational phrases, but also scientifically based strategies. Research in psychology and neuroscience shows that procrastination is not just about laziness, but about our brain's reward and threat systems. The brain responds more quickly to short-term gratification, whereas it finds long-term goals abstract and challenging. That's why it's more tempting to browse social media or watch something instead of working. Scientific research shows that methods such as behavioral activation are effective in overcoming this tendency. This method emphasizes taking action, not just feeling. In other words, instead of, "If I feel like it, I will do it," the perspective of, "If I do it, I will feel like it," is recommended. In addition, techniques that increase the level of arousal, such as using a timer, setting a clear time to start, and organizing the environment, also encourage the brain to take action. Another scientific method is the applied self-compassion approach. Trying to understand oneself instead of judging oneself reduces emotional pressure, and makes it easier to take action. This increases motivation and boosts self-confidence. In addition, making goals more specific and measurable, i.e., I will read about this topic for 20 minutes instead of I will study, makes it easier for the brain to connect with the task. In conclusion, overcoming procrastination is not only a matter of willpower, but also of understanding how the brain works and taking systematic steps to overcome it. Science gives us powerful tools to understand both the process and the solution. The important thing is to turn knowledge into action. Procrastination is not only a waste of time, but also an internal battle. Your confidence, your fears, your past experiences all play a role in this behavior in some way. But the good news is that it is possible to break out of this cycle. When you start applying what we talked about today to your life, you will see that small changes can make a big difference. If this video has enlightened you, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. I would love to hear how you deal with procrastination in the comments. Remember, the hardest step is always the first one, and you can take it. See you soon.